What's up everyone, this is Andrew and today I'm going to show you how to prepare your car body parts for paint. First of all, we're going to start by preparing the front bumper of a car, and the same procedure applies to a rear bumper or into side skirts or other metal parts, so that you can prepare those parts and send them in for paint. So in this video I'm going to show you how to prepare your body parts, and especially in this car how to prepare a bumper when it has deep and not deep scratches in order to prepare it for paint. So what I'm going to go ahead first is gonna start by cleaning up the most of the dirt from the bumper, and then I'm going to treat it with 220 grit sandpaper in order to smooth out the harder scratches and the deepest surfaces that are on the bumper. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and use a 500 grit sandpaper and then 1000 and even 16,000 grit sandpaper to smooth out the surface. It's better off if you don't skip sandpapers, because if you go, for example, 220 to 1000, you're gonna miss a lot. So you're basically gonna miss a lot of deep scratches and they're gonna still be there. So you need to take it on stages and start by the harder grit, let's say 220 or 240. It's the best for fiberglass parts. So I'm not using any body filler because this bumper has been repaired before. If I were to use body filler, I'm gonna show you in another video in the future. But right now, I'm gonna just show you how to sand down your front or rear bumper or any other fiberglass or metal parts, how to primer it properly with a spray on your backyard or on your garage. You have to be in a well-ventilated area to do that, and how to sand down your primed bumper so that you can finally have it prepared and send it for paint. So let's jump right into it. So I right now finished the lower part of the bumper, and let's see how it turns out to be. So this is the lower part of the bumper, then this is the part where it had the most problems. I can see here that this bumper has been repaired before. There is some Bondo and it has been cracked in some places. It is obvious that this bumper has seen better days, but that's not bad. It's good that this bumper has been repaired, and it's a good job. It's not a bad job. I used 220 grit sandpaper, which you can find at your local auto parts store or Home Depot or anywhere else, and just elbow grease, and you can see how it turns out. Well, you have to feel the surface after you're done, and it has to feel smooth like when you go to the normal paint smooth, even smoother when you sand it down with a 240 or 220. So my recommendation is not go lower than 220. It's gonna make too deep of scratches to your bumper. In this case, the bumper had two deep scratches. You can see here that the bumper has been scratching the road too many times, and there's still deep scratches, but I can feel here there's a deep scratch. I might have to go a little bit deeper with the sandpaper to make this flat and smooth. There were some other parts that were problematic, but basically that's it. $2 kit of sandpapers from Home Depot or Harbor Freight, and some labor, and then you can have sanded part. Well, right now this part is not ready yet. There's more parts that need to be sanded. This part here needs to be sanded as well, maybe with 500 grit sandpaper or 300. It's rough edges. It has been damaged from excessive exposure to the sun. The clear coat is also, we need to sand that part down, and some other parts here and there. The bumper itself is in great condition. I cannot complain about that, and it was pretty cheap. It cost me $300 to get this whole thing, as opposed to sometimes $500 and $600 for AMG parts, and I found this part locally. So it requires some labor, some workmanship, but it's not that hard. I didn't have any experience in this. You just sand it down and it makes the surface smooth, and then you're ready to primer it, which I will show you how to do it later. That I finished sanding down the whole thing with 220 to 20 grit sandpaper, we're ready to go ahead and clean it with some isopropyl alcohol so that we remove all the grease and dirt that's over it, and then I will sand it down with a smaller 500 grit sandpaper so we make the surface much smoother, and then we're gonna go ahead and prime it and then paint it. So right now finished the second sanding process with the 500 grit sandpaper. It's kind of boring process, but it's worth it because the more you take care of your bumper before you paint it, the more better the results will be in the end, and the paint will be more durable, especially in parts that are in front of the car and they're subject to a lot of debris, small rocks, chips, and stuff like that. So last step right now is to go with 1200 grit sandpaper to smooth out the entire surface, and then we're gonna go ahead and primer it with a spray can. Now the process is complete. I sanded it out with 220, then 500, then 1200 sandpaper, and now the surface is so smooth that you cannot even tell that this is not painted. So once you sand it down with the last sandpaper, it should feel like ultra smooth, like you're touching painted bumper. That means that now once I prime it, the primer will cover all the small holes that have been created from the sanding. Sorry, I stepped in the bucket there. And it will fill all the small scratches and holes that the sanding down left on the bumper. Now, there was a lot of damage on the bottom of this bumper, and this is not surprising since this car is too low, and with the hydraulic suspension on the lowest setting, this will scratch every road bump. Right now it is ready to be primed, and let's go check out the procedure in time-lapse. Now it's time to take a break and grab something to eat, probably junk food. it is now time for painting. So you want to make sure that you do this either in an outside area or a well-ventilated area, either in an open garage or outside. If you don't have a painting booth, of course you're going to do this on your driveway. So you want to make sure it's well ventilated and use a simple mask, or just use a mask because you don't want to inhale the toxic fumes from the spray. Ideal thing is to use a respirator, but I don't have one right now, so I'm going to use a mask, and I'm going to be very careful not to inhale the spray residue. So let's go ahead and primer this thing. If you want to use a spray primer, this is automotive primer. This is for metal and fiberglass. Our bumper is completely from fiberglass, so this is the right one to use. And we can also go ahead and sand this down. Right, there she is. So it's now primered. You don't need to go like full coverage to it. You just want to light coat and take a breaks between coats so that you have almost full coverage. It doesn't have to look same. It's not paint, it's just primer. And this is going to be light sanded down so that the surface goes even smoother. Right now, we're gonna let this dry, and we're gonna come back to it tomorrow, where it's gonna be where it's gonna be sanded, and it's gonna be ready for paint. All right, we're now next day, and now our primer is dry and nice. We can feel there's some kind of rugged surface. That's why the primer is there, to make the surface rugged so that the paint adheres properly. So right now I can see there are a few rugged spots. They need to be sanded down. So I'm gonna go ahead and wet sand the primer and then prepare it for paint. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prepare all those parts, put them back in the car, and then the car will be sent into paint when everything is ready. So let's go ahead and see some of the spots on the primer. All right, so here is a primed bumper, and there are a few spots like here. It's smoother than the edges, and I can see here there is a small crack on the edge here where the primer has dried. I will try and smooth that out with the sandpaper, and hopefully that will be it. And there's another crack here, probably from the temperature change. There is also deep scratches here. I should have probably, it doesn't feel like it, but you can see these deep scratches are still persistent, and that's why you need to sometimes use body filler to feel those out, but they should be fine because this is the underside part. It's not gonna show, and it's not gonna bother me at all. So yeah, let's go ahead and prime that and prepare that thing. Alright, I'm now done wet sanding the bumper, and now it's feeling smooth and nice. So right now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this thing and put it on the car, see the fitment, let's see if it aligns correctly with the fenders, and then start assembling the front part of the car. see the bumper fits like a glove. So we're waiting for the wheels to come. They're gonna be polished and refinished, and it's gonna look awesome. So this is the new bumper. The fitment is perfect, and I am probably gonna put the Brabus lip in front. I do have the parts there on this bumper, and I'm missing the middle part, so I'm gonna try and manufacture a grill of my own. I don't want to go with the original one. I want to put something a little more aggressive to fit with this one thin grill in the front. Other than that, I'm very happy with this purchase, this fitment, and how this is finished. And right now I'm gonna go ahead and take the parts from the old bumper. The bumper that are used for the shock absorptions, they were in pretty good shape. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use those parts on the new bumper than the parts that the bumper already had, because they're a lot better and softer. So this is the old bumper. I'm going to leave these protective covers on, and the good thing about these parts is that you can pause them online and maybe get some value out of them. Probably about some plastic parts, maybe these seals and these nickel covers. Also, sometimes, you know, somebody might crash his bumper on this side and he needs one piece. They can cut it and weld it with fiberglass at an auto shop. For example, my bumper, this is my old bumper, it was missing a big piece, big chunk of fiberglass here. If I happen to have that part, I would be able to weld it back in and patch it, and it would be a good bumper. But I guess that part was forgotten somewhere on the freeway. So this bumper is gonna go for probably for storage sale, and now I'm gonna go ahead and work a little bit more on the car, since there are a few more finishing touches that I should be doing. More specifically, there are some parts, if you can see over here, there is corrosion on the fiberglass panels. These panels are fiberglass, they're not metal, so there's this kind of corrosion on these cars. So I have to go ahead and sand that part down, and then it will be fine. And then the rear hood, so I have to prep it and sand it. So all the parts are gonna be ready for paint, and then the car is gonna be ready to go in the painting booth.